The brutal truth of a final goodbye. There comes a moment in life when the version of you that loved deeply, forgave endlessly, and endured silently, no longer exists. That version of you dies the moment you decide to walk away for good. And here's the truth. Once you leave, you don't come back. People will assume otherwise. They think you'll return because of old memories, lingering guilt, or a nostalgic hope that things might feel the same again. They rely on the idea that you are too kind, too forgiving, too soft-hearted to stay gone. They think time will weaken your resolve. But they don't understand what really happens when trust is broken and energy is drained. When your spirit has been exhausted by repeated disappointment, something inside you shifts forever. Silence becomes your answer. Distance becomes your defense. And your absence, that becomes the greatest statement of all. You see, walking away isn't just about leaving someone or something behind. It's about reclaiming yourself. It's about understanding that silence is not weakness, it's strength. Silence means you no longer waste your voice trying to explain to someone who never truly listened. It means you've stopped begging for respect you should have never had to ask for. In Stoic philosophy, true freedom begins the moment you let go of what you cannot control. And nothing proves that more than the power of a final goodbye. Your absence forces others to face the reality they denied. Your silence exposes truths that words never could. Think about it. How many times in your life have you stayed when you should have walked away? How many times did you give one more chance, hoping things would change, only to find yourself drained and disappointed again? At some point, the most powerful thing you can do is not to fight, not to argue, not to explain, but to leave. And here's where the real transformation begins. Because when you leave, you don't just close a chapter, you rewrite the story. You choose dignity over desperation. You choose peace over chaos. You choose self-worth over empty promises. This video is about that choice. About why your absence can be the greatest act of strength. About how silence, instead of being a void, can become your shield, your freedom, your ultimate source of dignity. Because once you say goodbye and mean it, truly mean it, you stop living for someone else's approval. You stop letting guilt or nostalgia pull you back into cycles of pain. And in that moment, you discover something priceless. That your silence, your distance, your refusal to return, is not a punishment for them, but a gift to yourself. There's a goodbye that isn't like the others. It isn't a pause. It isn't a silent treatment. And it isn't some strategy to make the other person miss you. No, this goodbye is different. It's not about punishing anyone. It's about protecting yourself. When you've given every ounce of loyalty. When you've poured out forgiveness after forgiveness. When you've extended grace until your heart feels empty, and in return, you've been betrayed, dismissed, or taken for granted, there comes a moment when leaving is no longer a choice. It's the only act of survival left. And this kind of goodbye, it's not loud. There are no angry words, no dramatic exits, no shouting matches that echo in the night. Instead, there is silence, a silence so heavy, it speaks louder than any accusation ever could. People often think silence is weakness. They confuse it with passivity, with giving up. But silence, when it follows betrayal, is not weakness. It is judgment. It is the final verdict that says, you no longer deserve access to my soul. Think about it. Words can be argued with. Excuses can be made. Apologies can be rehearsed and repeated until they lose all meaning. But silence? Silence leaves no room for debate. It tells the truth without a single word. And that truth is this: I am done. This isn't about bitterness, and it's not about revenge. It's about respect, not for them, but for yourself. Because when someone has proven that your loyalty is nothing more than a resource to exploit, the most courageous thing you can do is close the door and walk away. Let me ask you, how many times have you stayed in a place where you knew you were being drained, hoping, wishing, convincing yourself that maybe this time would be different? How many times did you silence your own needs just to keep the peace? Until one day you realized that the peace you were protecting was destroying you? The Stoics taught us that the measure of our freedom is not found in controlling others, but in controlling ourselves. And that includes the power to withdraw. The power to say, I will not continue to be broken here. I will not keep pouring into a cup that has no bottom. I will leave, not because I don't care, but because I finally do. I care about myself. That's the essence of an irreversible goodbye. It's not a tactic. It's not a game. It's a declaration. My self-respect matters more than your excuses. And here's the paradox: your silence, your absence, your refusal to fight anymore, that will hurt more than all the words you could have shouted. Not because you wanted to hurt them, but because nothing unsettles the guilty more than the quiet dignity of the one they lost. So, if you find yourself standing at that threshold, wondering if you should walk away, remember this: leaving is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of reclaiming it. This video will explore why this kind of goodbye is not weakness, but strength, why silence can cut deeper than anger, and why choosing to walk away is the ultimate act of freedom. Because in the end, some doors don't need to be slammed. They just need to be closed, quietly, firmly, and forever. Part 2. The Power of Absence. We live in a world where presence is often taken for granted. As long as you're around, answering the calls, showing up when they need you, laughing at their jokes, supporting their dreams, many people assume you'll always be there. They stop noticing the effort. They stop valuing the sacrifice. Your presence becomes invisible, like air. Essential, but unnoticed, until it's gone. And then one day, you leave. Maybe you walk away from a relationship. Maybe you step back from a friendship. Maybe you stop giving time to a place or a group where you were once the glue holding everything together. And suddenly, your absence speaks louder than your presence ever did. Because absence has a strange power. It acts like a mirror, forcing people to look at themselves without you standing beside them. They thought they could live the same way, carry on as if nothing happened. But now they find themselves staring into an empty space where you once stood. And that emptiness isn't quiet, it's haunting. Think about it. The laughter they once heard echoing in the room is gone. The voice that used to encourage them in their darkest hours is silent. The steady hand that pulled them back from their mistakes no longer reaches out. Every memory now feels like a ghost reminding them, you had something valuable. And you lost it. The Romans had a phrase: absence sharpens love, presence strengthens it. What they meant was simple: when someone is always there, you stop seeing them clearly. But when they're gone, the weight of their value finally sinks in. Absence wakes people up in a way presence never can. But here's the key: you cannot manufacture this. You cannot pretend to leave as some kind of trick, waiting for people to notice. That's just manipulation. The power of absence is born only when your leaving is real, when you finally withdraw. Not to prove a point, but because you've chosen to honor your own worth. Let me give you an example. Imagine a mother who has always been the one to fix everything: cooking, cleaning, holding the family together. Everyone assumes it's her job. No one thanks her. No one truly sees her. And then one day, she's gone for a week. Suddenly the house feels empty. Meals aren't ready. The warmth is gone. In that absence, the family realizes the depth of her presence all along. Or consider the workplace. You're the one who always goes the extra mile, always stays late, always helps others meet their deadlines. At first, your effort is appreciated, but over time, it becomes expected. And then, one day, you stop. You set boundaries. You no longer carry everyone else's weight. What happens? People notice. The system falters. And in that moment, they finally recognize the silent power you always carried. This is the paradox. You are seen most clearly when you are no longer there. Your absence is like an imprint, a shadow carved into the lives of others. And for those who took you for granted, that absence becomes a haunting reminder of the value they ignored. But here's the beautiful part. Absence is not just for them, it's for you. Stepping back gives you clarity. It reminds you that your worth is not tied to constant availability. It frees you from the illusion that you must always be present to matter. In fact, the less available you are, the more precious your presence becomes. Let me ask you something. How many times have you let people assume you would always be there, no matter how little they gave in return? How many times have you sacrificed your peace just to keep being present, while deep inside you were vanishing? What if instead, you allowed your absence to do the work your words never could? That's the Stoic way. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In the same way, waste no more time arguing for your worth. Don't plead, don't beg, don't explain. Simply withdraw. Let your absence reveal what your presence could not. Because here's the truth. People will always value water more when the well runs dry. They will miss the sun more when it stops rising over their horizon. And they will recognize your worth most deeply when your presence is no longer something they can consume without thought. So, don't be afraid of absence. Don't fear the silence it creates. Let it work in your favor. Let it remind others of what they lost. More importantly, let it remind you of what you deserve. Absence is not a punishment, it's a revelation. A revelation for them, and a liberation for you. Part 3. The stages of regret. Regret is a slow poison. It doesn't strike all at once, it unfolds in stages, creeping into the mind, layer by layer, until it becomes a life sentence. And when someone loses you because of their own choices, regret becomes their shadow. Let's walk through the stages they face when you finally decide to leave for good. Stage 1. Denial at first. They tell themselves you're just taking a break. They'll be back, they think. They just need some time to cool off. Denial is comfortable. It lets them believe that nothing is really lost. But denial is fragile, and time has a way of breaking illusions. Stage 2. Unease. Soon, unease begins to creep in. The calls they expect never come. The messages remain unread. The presence they once took for granted has vanished. And suddenly, life feels empty. What once felt ordinary, your smile, your voice, your support, is now a gaping hole. The silence that seemed harmless now grows heavy. Stage 3. Nostalgia. And then, the memories return. Like waves crashing harder with each tide. They remember the little things they ignored. The way you made them laugh. The way you stood by them when no one else did. The way you made life warmer. Nostalgia is cruel because it reminds them of what they had only after it's gone. Stage 4. Obsession. This is when regret deepens into obsession. They replay old moments in their head like a broken record. They imagine what they would say if they had another chance. They write messages they never send. They stalk old photos, read old conversations, and daydream about rewinding time. But the past is stubborn. No matter how many times they replay it, the ending never changes. Stage 5. Guilt. And then comes guilt, the sharp realization that they are the reason for the loss. No more excuses. No more shifting blame. The truth sinks in. Their betrayal, their indifference, their failure to value you was the cost. And now, they live with the weight of that truth pressing down on them. Stage 6. Haunting. Life becomes haunted by you. A song on the radio stings like a blade. A familiar place reopens old wounds. Even laughter from others reminds them of the happiness they squandered. Every reminder is a scar. Every memory a wound that refuses to heal. This isn't just sadness, it's torment. Stage 7. Permanent regret. Finally, they reach the last stage. Irreversible regret. A regret that doesn't fade with time but grows sharper with age. This is not the kind of pain you move on from. It's the kind that follows you forever. The Stoics believed that the consequences of our actions are inescapable. And here, the consequence is clear. Losing someone who once gave everything to you. And knowing you can never have them back. That is a life sentence. And here's the irony. While they are trapped in the cycle of regret, you are free. By walking away, you broke the chain. Their prison becomes the memory of you. Your liberation is the silence you chose. So the next time you feel tempted to explain, to argue, to prove your worth to someone who refuses to see it, remember this. Your absence will do the teaching. Your silence will write the verdict. And their regret will become the loudest echo in their life. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't anger. It isn't punishment. It isn't words. It's simply the permanent regret of never being able to have you back. Part 4. Your transformation. Walking away is not just about leaving someone behind. It's about rediscovering yourself. The moment you decide to stop pouring your energy into people who do not value it, something incredible happens. That energy comes back to you. The same love, patience, and sacrifice you wasted on others now becomes fuel for your own rebirth. At first, it feels strange. You're so used to giving, answering their calls, rescuing them from their mistakes, silencing your own needs just to keep the peace. But once the noise quiets, you realize that silence is not empty. It is full of space, full of possibility, full of the life you almost forgot you had. That silence becomes fertile ground. In it, you start to hear your own voice again, the voice that was drowned out by their demands and expectations. You begin to remember what makes you happy outside of them. Maybe it's a forgotten hobby. Maybe it's the freedom to wake up and breathe without tension. Maybe it's as simple as laughing without fear of being judged. This is where transformation begins. Because absence isn't just their punishment, it's your rebirth. You begin to reclaim passions that once lit your spirit. You discover joy in solitude, strength in stillness, and purpose in your own choices. Think of a garden. For years, you poured water into someone else's soil, hoping they'd bloom, but their ground was barren, incapable of growth. Now, when you finally water your own soil, flowers begin to appear, flowers that were waiting all along. And the most powerful part of this transformation? Self-respect. You learn to draw boundaries where there used to be none. You stop apologizing for protecting your peace. You no longer depend on the approval of others to feel valuable. Because you've seen the truth. Your worth was never theirs to define. Ask yourself this. How many times did you bend yourself just to keep someone else comfortable? How many times did you lower your standards just to hold on to someone who had already let go of you? Imagine what would happen if that same effort was invested in yourself, in your growth, your health, your dreams. That's the gift of walking away. It is not just separation, it is elevation. It is choosing to build a life where your happiness does not hinge on another person's recognition. It is learning to love yourself in the way you always wished they would love you. And here's the beautiful irony. While they may spiral into regret, you rise. You become someone new, stronger, freer, untouchable. You evolve into a version of yourself they can no longer reach. The person they once dismissed has transformed into someone they can only watch from a distance, knowing they no longer have access. This is the Stoic path. To accept loss without losing yourself. To turn silence into strength. To let go of what you cannot control and focus on what you can, your own mind. Your own choices. Your own life. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look." That's exactly what happens when you walk away. The source of strength was always within you. It was just buried under the weight of carrying others. Now, you are free. Free to grow. Free to rebuild. Free to become. So when you close the door and step into silence, don't fear what you're leaving behind. Embrace what you are stepping into, a life of dignity, peace, and transformation. Because in the end, the greatest revenge is not anger, not bitterness, not regret. It is becoming so whole, so radiant, and so untouchable, that the person who lost you will never again be able to reach the new version of you. Part 5. The unbridgeable distance. There comes a point when the distance between who you are now and who you once were becomes impossible to bridge. This distance isn't just physical, it's emotional, spiritual, and psychological. It's the kind of gap no apology, no promise, no desperate plea can ever cross. When someone loses you, they might try to win you back. They might send messages filled with, "I'm sorry," with vows of change, with promises to do better. But here's the truth. By the time they realize what they've lost, you've already grown beyond their reach. Because transformation creates distance. And once you've chosen dignity, peace, and self-respect, you no longer live in the same world they abandoned you in. You've stepped into a higher place, a place where your future matters more than their excuses. Think about it this way. Imagine you've been climbing a mountain. For years, you waited at the base with them, hoping they'd join you, but they refused. They stayed in the valley, distracted, careless, convinced you'd never leave. And then one day, you decided to climb. You struggled, you sweated, you fought your way upward. And now, standing halfway up the mountain, when they finally look up and call your name, what happens? You can hear them, but you cannot go back. The ground you left behind no longer holds you. That's the power of growth. It creates a distance no bridge can cover. This is why apologies, no matter how heartfelt, cannot undo betrayal. Words cannot rebuild the trust that actions destroyed. Promises cannot bring back the version of you that endured, forgave, and waited. That version of you no longer exists. What they lost was not just the you of the past. They also lost the you of the future, the stronger, wiser, more radiant version you are becoming. And that is a double loss. The person they once had. And the person they will never get to meet. Let me ask you something. How many times have you seen someone beg for a second chance? Not because they truly change, but because they suddenly realized what they stood to lose. And how often did that second chance simply repeat the same old patterns? Growth means you don't keep walking in circles. Growth means you outgrow the very cycle that trapped you. The Stoics believed that time is a river. You can never step into the same waters twice. The person who left is not the same as the person who once stayed. The river has flowed on. And so have you. To return would be to deny your own growth. To shrink yourself back into someone you no longer are. And here's the hardest truth for them. There is no way back. They can knock on the door of your past. But no one lives there anymore. The house has been emptied, rebuilt, and transformed into something entirely new. You've become someone untouchable, not because you're bitter, but because you've grown. You've created a distance that no apology can close. No promise can reach. So, when they come back with words, remember, words are easy. Change is rare. And by the time they realize what needed to change, you've already moved forward into a future they no longer have the privilege to share. That is the unbridgeable distance. And while it may hurt them, it liberates you, because you're no longer defined by who you were with them. You're defined by who you've become without them. Part 6. The invisible sentence. Memories and regret. Regret is not always loud. It doesn't always scream or rage. Sometimes, it's quiet, like a whisper that never leaves. And for those who lost you, regret becomes an invisible sentence they carry for the rest of their lives. At first, memories might feel like comfort. They replay moments in their mind, trying to soothe themselves with the thought, at least I had them once. But over time, those same memories turn cruel. What once was sweet becomes unbearable. Every memory that used to bring warmth now cuts like a blade. Because it reminds them of something they can never touch again. They are haunted by the what ifs. The words they never said. The apologies they never made in time. The chances they threw away. And in their mind, the past becomes a courtroom that never closes. With their own conscience acting as the judge, jury, and executioner. Have you ever noticed how silence makes the loudest noise in memory? They will sit in the quiet of their room and suddenly hear your laughter in the back of their mind. They will walk down a familiar street and see a shadow that reminds them of you. A song, a scent, a place, they all become reminders. And these reminders don't heal. They wound, over and over again. That's the invisible sentence. A prison built not with walls, but with memories. A punishment carved not by you, but by their own regret. But here's the difference, you are free. While they are haunted by the past, you are creating new memories. While they are trapped in what could have been, you are living in what will be. You are writing a new story with new people, new joys, and new dreams. And this is where your transformation shines the brightest. Because you realize you don't need to erase the past, you only need to stop living in it. You carry the lessons, but you no longer carry the pain. You stop rehearsing old conversations and instead begin writing new chapters. Let me ask you, how many of us waste years living in memories? Instead of creating them, how many of us replay old wounds while the present waits? Untouched, full of possibility? The Stoics warned us about this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not indulge in dreams of what you have not, but reckon up the chief of the blessings you do possess." While they are trapped in dreams of what they lost, you are counting blessings of what you are gaining. Picture it like this. They are standing in a room filled with echoes. No matter where they turn, they hear your voice, see your image, feel your absence. But you've stepped outside. You are under the open sky, breathing fresh air, seeing new horizons. You are free to live. And here's the ultimate irony. The more they hold onto your memory, the more it hurts them. The more you let go of theirs, the lighter you become. Their memories become a prison. Your memories become wisdom. Their regret becomes chains. Your silence becomes wings. So never fear leaving behind someone who took you for granted. Because while they are condemned to live with ghosts of their mistakes, you are free to build a future so full, so alive, that the past can never hold you back. That is the invisible sentence. Not for you, but for them. And that is why your greatest act of strength was never revenge. Never anger, it was walking away, leaving them to wrestle with the only thing that never lies: memory. Conclusion. True freedom. Leaving is not the end. It's the beginning. For so long, you may have believed that walking away meant failure, that to end a relationship, a friendship, or even a chapter of your life was to admit defeat. But the truth is the opposite. Walking away, when done with clarity and courage, is not a collapse, it's a rebirth. Because the moment you step out of the chaos, you step into clarity. The moment you release the chains that bound you, you reclaim the strength you thought you had lost. And the moment you stop wasting your voice on people who don't listen, your silence begins to roar louder than any words ever could. For them, regret will become the eternal punishment. They will replay the past like a broken film, haunted by what they could have done differently, what they should have said, how they might have acted if only they had understood sooner. But regret has no cure. The past has no second draft. That's their burden to carry. For you, however, silence becomes your shield, growth becomes your victory, freedom becomes your ultimate reward. Think about it. Every ounce of energy you once spent managing their chaos is now redirected to your own growth. The time you once wasted in arguments is now invested in your dreams. The love you once gave away freely to someone who squandered it is now poured back into yourself, your passions, your future. And here's the most powerful truth. You don't just become free from them. You become free from the version of yourself that settled for less than you deserved. That is the real liberation. The Stoics taught us that true freedom is not found in controlling others, but in controlling ourselves, our choices, our responses, our direction. And when you walk away, you are practicing that wisdom at its highest level. You are saying, I cannot control what you did, but I can control what I will accept. I cannot control your betrayal, but I can control my response. I choose me. So let me ask you, what is freedom worth to you? Is it worth more than temporary comfort? Is it worth more than keeping the peace at the expense of your own soul? Is it worth more than staying in a place where you were tolerated, but never truly valued? Because when you finally decide that your peace, your dignity, and your growth are worth more than their approval, you unlock the door to freedom. And what does that freedom look like? It looks like waking up without anxiety. It looks like pursuing passions you once buried. It looks like laughter returning, not forced or faked, but real. It looks like building relationships that honor who you are, not what you can give. It looks like becoming someone stronger, wiser, and untouchable. A version of yourself they will never have the privilege of knowing. That's the victory. Not revenge, not bitterness, not anger, but freedom. Freedom to walk your own path. Freedom to grow without limits. Freedom to live without chains. So, remember this. Walking away is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a better one. For them, regret will be the endless punishment. For you, silence will be your strength. Growth will be your triumph. And freedom, true, unshakable freedom, will be your final reward. And in that freedom, you will find not just healing, but wholeness, not just survival, but transformation, not just escape, but arrival at the life you always deserved, but finally chose.